Okay, Bill Henrikson gets a revelation to run for senator this season, and somehow that means everyone around him has to suffer.
He says it's for his family, but let's be honest. He's hiding his polygamy, hiding a child out of wedlock, throwing his best friend Dawn under the bus, and still somehow thinks he's the hero.
Bill's manipulation is next level this season. He'll sacrifice anyone, his wives, his kids, his friends, all to chase this so-called vision.
It's like a political campaign meets cult leader mindset. Let's get into the damage Bill causes in Big Love Season 4. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 35 kids. We were members of the FLDS Church, which is a polygamist group run by their prophet Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a life sentence in prison.
I was raised mainstream LDS in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years, and we have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We want to quickly thank all of you so much. We reached our 100,000 subscriber goal, and we cannot believe we actually got it. But thank you all so much for your support and being here along this journey with us.
Thank you guys so much. Honestly, when we started this channel, we never would have thought that there'd be 100,000 people that would be interested in hearing us talk about polygamy or stories from people about polygamy and having lived in it or come out of it or reactions. I don't know. It's just all wild. So thank you guys so much.
Yes, it's amazing. We are back at it with Big Love Season 4. And there's just a couple things to talk about.
Just a few.
Just a few.
Yes, we decided that we are going to bust out Season 4 in one episode today. So hang on tight because basically Bill has gone crazier than normal. I should say crazier because he's always a little bit crazy. But this season has just as many moving parts as the last. It just keeps getting crazier and crazier. I honestly don't know how they're going to wrap it up in one more season. Like, we haven't looked ahead to see, like, did they know it was going to be the end of the show after season 5? Like, is it going to be, like, all wrapped up and tightly with the bow? Or is it one of those shows that ends up getting canceled and there's, like, a cliffhanger and there's, like, no resolution at the end? Because I can't imagine how they're going to go from here to somehow be wrapped up in one more season.
I think the last season has 10 episodes. So, anyway, that'll be interesting. And we're excited to see how it all ends up. But wow, I think it's safe to say that every single character in the show, or the main characters in the show, went crazy this season.
Yes, it was wild. And starting off strong is the fact that we were wondering whether or not Roman Grant was actually dead. And indeed, he is dead. And we found that Nikki found him in a freezer, that Adeline had just been hiding him. And even his death and his body being like moved around to try to like be on the casino land to try to cause problems for Bill.
Which Albie sent the body there to try to do something to harm Bill somehow.
To harm Bill, right? Yeah. And then them sending the body back. Like, it's just always a fiasco. But Roman was officially dead. And we had said at the end of last season, I was like, I felt like from the very beginning, he's going to become like a prophet somehow. Well, I was wrong, but I wasn't super far off either because it starts this next season with him starting his own little church with his family, right? And how they're gathering in a meeting place and that they're trying to get more like a church and that they want all of those feelings. I think especially for Barb, who's missing the Mormon church after being excommunicated, it's like wanting to buckle down and start a church of his own.
Right, and there's a lot of people that are saying that, well, now that Roman's dead, Bill, maybe you should be the next prophet, right?
Yep, Nikki's
one of them, and Joey is another one, and they just, obviously it's for their own gain, right? Like Nikki wants it because she believes that if she's married to the highest and mightiest person of some church, then she's going to finally fulfill her destiny. And Joey feels like it's his birthright because it was their grandfather that was the prophet, and then Roman came in and took over and destroyed that legacy for them. So they're all in it for their own gain, but in the end, Bill he just can't, oh man, this guy. He is always willing to do whatever it takes to
get what he wants.
And if it is throwing everyone under the bus along the way in order to get his end goal, he will make it happen. Yeah. And so we see him start to create this church building and congregation where they're beginning to meet and starting their own church in a way.
Yeah, and he's starting to do that, right? He's starting, and then people are talking about prophet, but he decides, well, not he decides, he receives a revelation that he is not meant to be the prophet, but he's supposed to lead in a different way and bring polygamy to light in a different way by running for senator. Now, for people who aren't familiar with Mormonism in general, the idea of like receiving a revelation, like people use that term all the time. Yeah. I don't think I realized how odd that sounds to people outside of Mormonism until I made a good friend who grew up Catholic, and she heard that. She's like, what do you mean they received a revelation? And I was like, well, people, you are taught that not only does like the prophet and the apostles receive revelation, your bishop receives revelation over congregation, but that also that you can receive personal revelation for you and your own family, and your priesthood head, which is the man of the house, would receive revelation for your family. So that word isn't as big of a deal in Mormonism. I mean, it is, but it isn't. Like the idea that people can get revelation is not a big deal. Just to clarify that. Yeah. But he receives a revelation that he is supposed to run for senator. And everyone instantly is like, I just couldn't even believe that he would think of something like that when literally Barb trying to be mom of the year went so horribly wrong, just like they thought it would. Because they're polygamists. They're supposed to be, it's illegal, and they're not supposed to be in the limelight.
And so he thought, hey, if I run for senator and I am elected because I lie my way through everything and tell everyone whatever they need to hear to get into the position, then suddenly everyone is going to be all happy when they hear that I'm a polygamist, and they're going to support me now for some reason. And accept me for some reason. Just because you're in some political office doesn't mean that suddenly it's okay. I'd never understood his reasoning, like why he thought that it was a good idea to begin with. Obviously, we see his wives do not appreciate the idea, except for Nikki, because Nikki is just thinking, okay, well, as long as he's in some kind of power, then yay, I'm all about that. Nikki's the worst. So anyway, the other wives, though, Barb and Margine, man, I forgot her name, and Margine are very unhappy because they are already seeing into the future on how this might affect their family.
Well, exactly. And again, like they've seen in the past, anytime they've tried to make any kind of big moves or business deals, like every step of the way, even with the casino, right? Everything is always complicated by the fact that they are a polygamous family trying to hide that fact. So the idea of trying to be in the public eye so much as to run for senator is wild. And every step of the way, they are told, like, absolutely not. This will expose us in this way. It'll expose us in that way. It'll be bad for this. And every time Bill is just like, no, we'll figure it out. Or I'll just run over whoever I need to be able to make that happen, right?
How would Bill say that? Doggone it, family, I need you to support me and my vision. This family, we got to stick together. Yeah. He talks this in a way that is becoming more and more increasingly annoying as the show goes on, especially because he knows, and you know that he knows that it's all a lie, but he says it in a way trying to convince people that he had this great revelation.
Yes, and that everybody needs to be on board with Bill at all times. And that is the mindset, right? But even while they're trying to scout out, okay, is this even a possibility? Could I possibly get into this office? They find out that Anna is pregnant with Bill's baby. Okay, any other normal person that's not even a polygamist, if you have an affair and have a baby with someone, that normally kicks you out of the possibility of office. People, especially in Utah, where it's such a family-oriented state and such like traditional values, the idea, and he's like, oh, well, we can just hide that. Like, he offers to pay her. Okay, we're not going to get a lawyer involved. I will just make sure that everything, don't you trust me? I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of you. This is our baby. And at first, everyone else thinks it's their baby too. That this baby was conceived while the 3 days that she was married to Bill. And, especially Barb is like grasping at holding on to all the babies of the family, right? Because the family started plural marriage when she couldn't conceive. So she's had this idea that all these babies are also hers, right? Like, this is for the family. So she tries to say that to Anna, and Anna's like, this has nothing to do with you. You're not involved. You guys are crazy. Yeah. Like, this is Bill and my baby. You don't have any stance on this. And then when Barb finally won't let it go, Anna finally says, well, this baby wasn't conceived in the marriage, so you have no ties. And
so that's when Barb finds out that they did the deed before they were ever sealed together or whatever. So yeah, so then of course she loses her mind over the fact that he was unfaithful to their marriage not only once but now twice.
And that it was with Margine too, because I don't know if we had known that before, but she's like, it happened with Margine, it happened with Anna. And so she's becoming like, she's so frustrated at Bill for this during this time, right? And is like, how are you going to fix it? This is also like, this isn't a good idea to move forward with the campaign, but Bill doesn't care because he figures as long as he can hide it all properly and work some Bill magic so that it doesn't come out until after he gets into office, then everything will be okay.
Yeah, I think something to point out here as well is with the baby, the reason that Bill felt obligated to take care of the baby is because he felt like God sent, because of his religious beliefs, that God sent this baby to his family. So at first he was all about, let's make sure we, include this baby and raise this baby together. But as time goes on, of course, he starts focusing more on the campaign and less on the baby.
Well, not only that, but Anna has a fiance, Goran.
Yes.
And so when Bill finds out that she's moved on, that she has a fiance, and that he mentions multiple times, he's like, well, you are the father, but like, I'm going to be the dad.
I'm going to raise the baby.
I'm going to be raising the baby. Like, you won't be involved. You can tell Bill gets like super on the defense. And even more as time goes and like they might have to leave the country, and Marge offers to marry Anna's fiance so that he can stay in the country. And Marge is like, I'll just marry him so that can happen, and is willing to do anything to try to make them stay until it's no longer going to serve Bill. And then Bill decides, no, we're going to have it go because he's jealous of Margie being married to somebody else.
Right. Which just the idea that just goes to show you their mindset of the legal marriage. It doesn't mean anything because Margie always doing things that she's just so innocent, she's
so naive.
Naive, that's the better word. Thank you. She's so naive to how things are done. She just goes and says the legal marriage doesn't mean anything. It's just a piece of paper. And of course, she's been hearing from Bill all along that it's the spiritual marriage that matters because, of course, she's not legally married to Bill at all.
Yeah.
So she just thinks, I'll just solve the problem. I'll go get married to this guy, and so that way he can stay in the country.
And then when Bill gets mad at her and is like, it's not okay to be married to two men, that's not natural. And she's like, if you care so much and this legal marriage has some kind of weight to it, are you telling me that your marriage with Barb means more and you've been lying to me this whole time? Right? So the hypocrisy behind it and the idea that her being married just to solve this problem doesn't work if it's not Bill's idea, right? Because Bill flip-flops around this. He's so mad at first about it. Like, Margine, how could you do that? You can't be married to another man. You can't be married to two men, me spiritually and him legally. And then he's like, actually, this could work for us, right? So yes, no, you do need to marry him because that can help out the fact that we're not polygamists yet. And then he changes his mind again later and says, you need to get divorced and they're just going to have to leave and I'll worry about it. Once I become a senator, I can help pull strings. So once again, it's always about Bill. It's always about his ego. Margine is seeing the hypocrisy right in front of her and she's getting frustrated at that as well through it. So that one's, man, the stuff that he's willing to go through during this campaign. I mean, basically sweeping Anna under the rug and being like, we'll make whatever happen. No lawyers. Let's just make sure that nobody finds out about this. And that's the most important thing to him. The other thing is him and Barb they want to go back to church so that they can look like they're a strong LDS family to all their constituents so that they can get the votes, right? So they go back to the LDS bishop. They say that they're not practicing polygamy anymore and that they want to go back to church on Sundays. And the bishops give the very normal answer, I think, to them, which is when people want to go back to church, they're like, because of your sins, you can't have any callings, which is different positions in the church that are volunteer. Almost everybody in the church that is worthy has a calling. So there's different, whether it's like teaching Sunday school or teaching young men's or young women's or Relief Society, different leadership roles, right? So they're not allowed to have callings. They're not allowed to give public prayers, and they're not allowed to take the sacrament, which is the biggest I don't know if punishment's the right word, but it's, you can't take the sacrament unless you're worthy. So it's a big measuring stick of whether or not you're worthy. And as you become worthy, then you'd be allowed to take the sacrament, which is every single Sunday the sacrament is given in church.
Yes, and the sacrament is done in public. So if you are not taking the sacrament, other people can easily see that something's going on because you're not taking the sacrament. So I'm not saying that every single person in that church building is judging everyone around them, but it does happen, and people are judged because they're not allowed to take the sacrament. So it's one of those things that is more than just in your heart you feel bad. You are in public not being able to take it. So Barb feels really guilty about lying because, once again, they're not just keeping the fact that they're polygamists. They're going and actively lying and saying that, we're living, we're trying, we're repenting, and all of these things in order to just get that or gain the favor of people around them to be able to get elected into office. So
yes, I still just don't know how Bill thought that this was going to go well.
Yeah.
But they're trying to look Mormon, they're trying to look monogamist, and they're just hoping that everyone magically forgives them for lying and cheating their way into office. But they still have this like LDS mentality too, right? So Bill was giving the sacrament in his own church. Mm-hmm. Now he's pretending to have the sacrament elsewhere. Also, Sarah goes to get married and everybody is freaking out that it's not within the church, that they're not going to be sealed. Like her mom's like, it's not going to be in a temple. Well, then you should let your dad seal you because he has sealing powers, right? Like the idea that she doesn't believe in Mormonism at all at this point, and neither does Scott, but it's so important to the family that Barb is losing her mind over it.
Yeah, Barb is it's hard to understand her mentality and what she's going through, because obviously it sounds like she just is so fed up with everything going on. Mm-hmm. I don't think she ever wanted to live polygamy to begin with, and now because this lifestyle was thrown upon her and forced on her, she is now desperate to keep her family in it for some reason. Like, you would think that she would rather her family, get out of it if she is so unhappy. But instead, it's almost like she wants to keep all of her loved ones stuck in this same kind of lifestyle because she was forced into it. It's a very interesting mindset. Yeah,
it's a good point. You think she wants Sarah out of it. I think she has to prove to herself that what she's doing is okay and is right. And so, but I mean, she's guilting Sarah. She says, your marriage will mean nothing. Nikki is talking to Sarah saying, when you hear the words "till death do you part," it'll be the loneliest words you've ever heard. And these are all things that are definitely said and talked about within Mormonism, that if you're not sealed in the temple, you're going to lose your family for eternity. Yep. The "till death do us part" was talked about a lot when I was younger, about how we're the only church that seals through eternity so your family can be together forever. And everybody else, isn't that so sad? Every time you went to a regular wedding, it was emphasized like how sad it is that their marriage is only till death do you part. Yeah. And how we should all like be so sad and mournful for them, and that their marriage just doesn't mean as much as your marriage within the church with the sealing power. So right. Sarah's getting a lot of pressure. Her and Scott, Scott at one point's like, can we please just elope? Let's just elope. And she likes that idea, but she does still care about her family. And so they end up having just a regular wedding, but in the backyard, so that her parents, including her family, so that they can at least see her be married, even though it's not a sealing. Yeah.
So I don't know. And it's once again, I feel like Bill, he creates all of these problems with his kids, with his wives, and then he just goes and either tries to flip the narrative to make it sound like it was their fault to begin with, or he throws money at them, or does whatever it takes, or gives them a priesthood blessing out of nowhere, even though his son just had done something that would go against being worthy of getting a blessing or receiving the priesthood. So he's always just creating a mess and then throwing whatever at it to solve the problem. And this is a big one with Sarah, where they were definitely, they were falling apart. Bill and Sarah's relationship is not going well, but of course Bill is going to do whatever it takes to make it seem like he is the good guy here and is just trying to help and love his daughter, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's frustrating to see.
Throughout the campaign, Bill needs Sarah to look like the happy family. So even though she's married, she needs to be at press conferences and needs to be out there showing support for him. But eventually in the season, her and Scott decide to move. And she's like, I don't want to be a part of what's going to happen after you come out. I don't want to be collateral damage. Scott and I don't want to. We're going to move. We're going to start our life fresh somewhere else. And that made me really happy for her. But man, even that she's getting guilt for, right? There's a lot of guilt about not being part of the family vision, which I'm like, she's married at this point. So the idea that like Bill has to hold on to her for the family vision is also silly. And then, I mean, like I said, except for the fact that he needs her to make him look like a good dad, right? And so when he needs her, he goes and pays her, gives her some money to support her move right before he needs her to show up for some press. And she ends up doing it. So again, Bill doing whatever is best for Bill to make himself look as good as possible in this stupid campaign that is just this wild roller coaster, from everything from like the casino to, dealing with Marilyn, who he's trying to do backdoor deals with like everybody, right? Because he's always so used to dealing with Juniper Creek and like backdoor deal here and here and here, and let me scratch your back and you can scratch mine, and all these deals all the time. And it keeps biting him in the butt time and time again by the way he treats people, to the point where Marilyn's getting in on it and is trying to kind of sabotage him, figure out stuff about him. And watching the whole thing go on is just exhausting.
And with all of the craziness and mess going on at the casino, that leads into Barb actually having to kind of be in charge of everything, because now Bill's too busy in his campaign that she's up there trying her best, but also making a bigger mess out of everything because of all of the stuff going on there. So it's just another huge storyline that was creating more of a mess and disaster for them.
Yeah, and Barb never wanted the casino to begin with, right? And Bill fought tooth and nail because that's what Bill gets, what Bill wants, right? So he's fighting for what he wants. He gets the casino and then basically ends up completely on Barb's shoulders. She's having to run it, and Bill just uses Barb for whatever he needs. Yeah. You need to run the casino? Go run the casino. Oh, I need you to be at press conferences even though you don't want me running for senator. You have to seem like my happy wife. Oh, you have to go lie to the LDS bishopric because I need you to act like you want to go back to church. Okay, now I need you to do this. Now I need you to do that. And he's constantly just using her as a pawn for whatever he needs to do, to look like the loyal housewife, to look like his, well, I mean, she's the first wife, but to look like the picture perfect wife. And right. That even gets her in trouble because during the campaign at one point, she ends up talking to a group of women and admitting, and she kind of has like a little breakdown moment where she's like, man, why do we always have to pretend like we're perfect? Maybe that's why we all are on antidepressants and anxiety meds and all these things. And can't we just stop having to be perfect? Well, of course, they twist that in the campaign to saying she thinks that all Utah moms are on drugs. And that in Utah is a real thing as well. Like, she isn't pulling that out of nowhere. There is a lot of stress and emphasis put on being as perfect as you possibly can. Right. And there are a lot of women that causes a lot of mental health issues in people. Another reason I had heard, it was actually like clear back in high school or something. I think we were talking about this issue in general, or maybe it was in a college class. And they were also saying that because LDS women like don't drink or use any type of drugs, they get a lot of prescription drugs. They go to their doctor to be able to help with things that people might have a really hard day or a hard week, and they'll go have a couple drinks or have a glass of wine to kind of calm themselves down. And when you don't have the ability to drink any alcohol or use any kind of substance to calm down, or marijuana or anything like that, then they end up turning towards their doctors and getting prescription drugs. So that is a real problem in Utah, and perfectionism and that being idealized, or women just doing the most things, you know, having to have their hair a certain way and their eyelashes and their lips and their Botox and this and that and the other. So when Barb was mentioning that, I was like, good for you, Barb. But of course, that looked really bad in the press for Bill running for Senate.
Which of course, because it looks bad for them, Bill is requiring that she go and apologize and say, I'm sorry I said that, you know, and retract her statement and all of those things, even though he knows that she believes it. and actually meant it, he wants her to go and basically lie once again and say, I don't actually mean that.
And luckily, that was probably the only good thing Bill did. Luckily, at the end, remember, he didn't make her do it.
Right.
Thank goodness. But he was saying, like, you need to do that. You need to do this. So thank goodness he finally didn't make her do all that. But it was just
Which, I
frustrating.
mean, I can also understand there are certain things maybe you shouldn't say in public, you know, especially if it's going to, or it could be twisted to sound really bad towards, you know, the people, your voters, right? Mm-hmm. But either way, oh man, I can't blame. There are definitely things that Barb does that is very frustrating, but I can't blame her for being very, very angry about the way things have been handled.
Yeah, there's a lot of anger there and justified in my mind.
Yeah.
But this entire time that they are going through all their messiness, and we'll kind of get to how each wife is handling that at the end. But I know we've talked a little bit about Barb, but we'll talk about them all a little bit more in detail. But Juniper Creek at this time right now is also in crazy turmoil because Roman is officially dead. Albie is saying that he is now going to be the leader, but he is completely gone off the rails with his affair with the UEB trustee. So at this time, Bill had worked really hard to get there to be a trustee in charge of the UEB and ends up with this, I believe it was a lawyer, and named Dale. And it turns out that Albie and him had like a rendezvous before knowing each other, finding out that they were going to have to work together, the UEB trustee and him being the new prophet. And they end up having this affair that ends up causing so much turmoil. Albie is just like not even there. He's kind of going crazy. And Dale is having to deal with the fact that he is an LDS man who has a wife and has children. And he's going to help groups. He's leading these groups talking about same-sex attraction, how it's not in the premortal existence, how it won't be in the celestial kingdom, how everyone just needs to control their urges, which is the stance of the LDS Church even still. And it's hard to see.
Yeah, he talks about how difficult it has been because, like I say, or like Melissa said, he has a wife and kids now. So he's trying his best to live the LDS lifestyle, you know. But we hear and we see a glimpse into his past that he's gone to all these different types of therapy to try to trick his mind into not being attracted to men. And they've done all of these awful, horrible things.
Electroshock therapy.
And that have left scars, and that they would force him to watch things, and then at the same time throwing up, you know, to try to convince him that it was nasty and all of these things. Anyway, awful, awful experience. And that kind of thing did happen as well, unfortunately, in real life. I just can't even imagine. But anyway, that is all going on. So he's very, very tormented and very conflicted with his feelings because Dale does have feelings for Albie as well. But he's trying to tell Albie to leave him alone. And then, of course, there's the professional side of it. That
it's not ethical.
It's not ethical because they should be against each other because Albie's pretending to be the prophet and he's on the board trying to run things from the government standpoint. So it's just a big mess.
It's so messy. And then it's so sad and tragic to see Dale going to his bishop, talking about all the different therapies, talking about how he just can't be who he is and he's dealt with this his entire life. And it gets to the point where he ends up taking his own life. And that's so sad to see someone going through that's obviously having all this turmoil of trying to reconcile his life with his feelings and his sexuality and coming to that point. And Albie finding him, and Albie basically kind of loses it after that. I think he felt like it was the first real relationship, not a random hookup, not him feeling guilty. Like Albie was much more feeling like he wanted the relationship to work and was trying to make it work. Obviously, Dale was more conflicted with that than Albie was, but Albie basically goes off the rails. Like he is not there anymore, dealing with the loss of Dale. He goes like crazy on his wife and like, all sorts of stuff. It's just, he's in a really bad headspace, but he's still pretending and acting like he is prophet. So much so that he is still doing sealings and marriages. And two things that they did that were like very realistic in this season was doing marriages in a motel.
Yep.
And that is something that the FLDS that really happened that Warren Jeffs would do. Even when he was on the run, he would come back to do marriages in the motels.
Yep. And that was done in Nevada in some cases, and other states as well. But yes, they would just basically in the middle of the night in some cases rush people to these hotels and require them to get married. In some cases, these young girls were very much against it, but they were forcing them into these marriages and then rushing them back before anyone knew that they were gone or where they were. And so it showed that a little bit here, and also put into perspective how difficult that might have been on some of these girls that were being forced into these marriages.
Yes, Nikki, obviously that's where her first marriage happened to JJ, because when she heard that Carolyn was going to a motel, she freaked out, went down there and was able to save Carolyn before Carolyn was married off at the age of 15 as well. So she was able to save her daughter from an underage marriage, but at the same time she found out that her mother was getting married to JJ.
Right.
So that, before I get into that, because that's craziness, the other main thing that was also real life was they were showing real footage from Rulon Jeff's funeral on the TV to show Roman's funeral, wasn't it?
Yes. So we were watching that, and they were kind of showing, hey, a news clip of the prophet of the Juniper Creek has died, and then they showed the funeral service, and they just showed a very quick clip of this, all the FLDS prairie dresses and people walking to this funeral, and it was a clip of the actual funeral of Rulon Jeffs, and I thought, I recognize some of these people. This is crazy. But so they would try to use actual clips of real life things that did happen, actual names of things that really were true. So a lot of things done in this show, though blown out of proportion in some cases, in other cases were very factual.
Yes. One of those cases being like the idea of JJ having married Nikki and then later marrying Adeline, which Albie said, you know, when they were talking about, okay, yeah, you can have Adeline. And they referenced her as property of the priesthood, the idea that women were property and the prophet is allowed to place them with whoever he sees fit.
Yeah.
In this case, JJ requesting Adeline. But not even just the craziest, because there's so many crazy parts to this. But just last weekend, we were with some of Sam's biological sisters, and they were talking about family history and grandmothers and stuff. And I think we had mentioned Big Love. Oh, no, it was before we saw this portion. And they were like, well, yeah, because one, you know, so-and-so, he was married to this one daughter and then married her mom and then married two more of her sisters.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, they're the one guy, he married this one girl and then married her mom and then married two more of the daughters. So he ended up with three sisters and their mother, all his wives. And so then when he had kids with them, they were like, when the mom had another baby, it was the girl's like aunt or uncle and also considered one of their children at the same time. And I was like,
yeah,
this is real life. And they're like, yeah, the crazy thing is we thought that wasn't a big deal at the time.
Yeah, and that's just it wasn't a big deal at the time. When I was in this and believing in the FLDS church and I would see things like this happen, I just thought, oh, wow, you know, I mean, I guess God wanted this family to all be sealed together, and this must be amazing. But now seeing this portion of Big Love of this season where so Nikki's ex-husband, JJ, that she was married to when she was only 15 years old, is now requesting and getting permission from Albie to be sealed to Nikki's mom. I mean, that it's just wrong, right?
Yeah, because basically, yeah, she's going to be the grandmother and a mother to Carolyn. Like, you know what I mean? By marriage. It's so...
So they go through with it. She does get married, and Adeline feels like it's her duty as a woman of the Juniper Creek.
You almost said FLDS.
A woman of the priesthood, I guess. And she's always been very faithful to Roman. Mm-hmm. Now Roman's dead, and she's just she's grasping at whatever is remaining of this faith that she believes in. Yeah. And so when she's called to... The fact that, her son tried to kill her. She tried to kill her son, Albie here, and now she's believing and going along with him sealing her to another man. Like none of this makes any sense to me. But either way, they are sealed, and then it's not very long after that they're married that she comes and tells Nikki, "Hey, guess what? I'm pregnant." How old do you think she is at this point?
At this point, she's got to be like late 50s.
In her late 50s, and she tells Nikki, "I'm pregnant." And also, Nikki at that time had been trying to get pregnant, and she hasn't been able to. So Nikki's feeling all of these feelings, and then to hear it from her mom at that age, she loses her mind.
Yep. And then her mom says, well, we have this awesome doctor who's JJ's son, and you should go to him too if you're having fertility problems. So Nikki starts going, and we end up finding at the same time that all this weird stuff's going on with JJ and Adeline and Nikki going to this doctor down there in Juniper Creek, the news is coming out with news against what's happening in Kansas, which they called the New Zion, and they find out that $100 million has been spent in building this compound, but they find out that there's been a lot of incest that's been happening there. And this was the one part where I was like, Sam and I were talking the other day, I was like, Big Love is pulling from a lot of polygamous groups, but I haven't seen anything pulled from the Kingstons yet.
That we know of.
Yes.
Maybe there has been some that we just were unfamiliar with.
That we were unfamiliar with. Mm-hmm. But this one was a glaring Kingston move because we end up finding out that JJ was prominent in Kansas and that he was causing incest to happen there with marriages that even like Romans books weren't covering it. Albie had no idea about it. Bill couldn't find it anywhere. But then we find out that JJ was artificially inseminating women with, like, Adeline is pregnant with JJ and Carolyn's, his daughter's baby. Okay. We'll let that sink in for a second.
Wait, I thought it was his sister Wanda. Wasn't it his sister Wanda and his?
Oh, I thought it was Carolyn and his.
No. I think they were going to put Carolyn and his in Nikki, is what they were attempting to do.
Oh, you're right. Still all of that.
It's
so him and his sister, you're right,
disturbing.
Are in Adeline, and then it was going to be, either way, incest between siblings, and he's doing this all versus like in IVF and having his son, who got a medical degree, make all this happen and impregnate people with incestuous eggs and sperm. Now, I don't know. I mean, when I say Kingston, typically, from what I understand, they're going about it in just making each other get married that are super close and having incest that way, because the Kingstons believe in a pure bloodline. They believe they're direct descendants of Jesus Christ and that they have to keep their bloodline pure. Yeah. JJ's obviously doing something similar, but with science. But I've heard more and more. Maybe we need to have Amanda Ray on again to talk about this more. But I know that the Kingstons have also hired scientists to be able to help with the fact that there were so many birth defects.
That's what I was going to say, is they are starting to have, or at least we've heard and seen, that they've had these labs and things where they are trying to keep the bloodline pure and also have healthy babies. So they are starting to include doctors and scientists and things like that, which are members of their own church, of course, and then going and getting these degrees so that they can help in that situation. So
yes, it was wild. I mean, obviously this whole thing, I mean, everything I just said, I can't believe I just had to say into a microphone for the world to see. It's absolutely wild. Luckily, I'm like, thank goodness this part is just a TV show. Although, again, it's like, okay, but how much of that is like with the Kingstons? And that is real life. But in the TV show in Big Love, Bill ends up saving Nikki before it ends up happening to her. And Adeline ends up being able to escape. And she ends up burning down the clinic.
Okay, you have to admit, like, because it was a TV show, like seeing JJ and his one wife
that was in on it,
being tied, there was in on it and helping him with all of this, tied together with a rope, as Adeline dumps gas over the entire hospital that they were doing this in, or the little trailer turned into hospital, and then lighting the match and the whole thing. That was satisfying.
Only because it wasn't real life.
It wasn't real life.
We don't have murderous hearts,
and
but
all of but all of the nasty things that JJ was doing, and all of the people he had harmed, and all of the awful things he was doing, to see him being wiped off the TV show map was very satisfying.
Although, because of how it's been previously, I'm still nervous, like whether or not he's still alive.
No,
You don't think so? She got punished like they were actually dead. She got punished. She got put in a pit from Albie's wife, and she got punished and is in a repentance process.
Which we've heard that the pit of shame, which is not the correct term, what did they call it?
I think they just called
Of
it
repentance?
A pit. No.
Just a pit where people would be sent to go repent, I think is also something used in the Kingstons, in the Kingston
Was
group.
it the Kingstons? Or I had heard of a pit also in the AUB, but I think that was by a family, not by a particular, like, not religious group, but like one family would.
But putting someone in this like little pit with a lid over the top where you could lock it and they couldn't get out, and they would be down there for however many days until they thought that they were repentant, right? Or that the leaders thought they were repentant, or I guess if it's a family member, the probably the father of the home. Either way, it showed that where Adeline was put down there and had to repent of killing JJ and his wife.
Yeah, so that was a wild storyline. Nikki still hasn't told Carolyn, so I don't know how Carolyn's going to end up finding out about that. But she's been staying with Nikki full time, obviously, not knowing her dad is dead, which Nikki, we can go into now. So that's what's happening in Juniper Creek. It's wild. It's crazy. Albie's still kind of the prophet. There's stuff going on in Kansas that he doesn't know about, or he says he doesn't know about. And he's trying to cope with the death of his lover. And it's just the Wild West down there, right? Bill ends up becoming the UEB trustee after Dale. Bill has, again, this vision that he's going to be able to help everybody just be more open and out in the open. And it's just a mess. But Nikki, while she's trying to raise Carolyn, she is really having an identity crisis herself. She is trying to figure out how she wants to wear, how she wants to act. She's finding out that she might not be able to have another baby, but now all of a sudden she actually wants one. She talks about how she's now finally fallen in love with Bill and how she doesn't even want to have to share him because she actually loves him. Which now at this point, they've been married for so long, I think the look on Bill's face when she said that, like, well, now I'm in it for love. And he's like, okay, like, that's good.
It's all been duty up to that point.
Yeah.
And that is something that we hear actually happening in these closed-off groups where they are arranged, the marriage is arranged, and it's supposed to be this spiritual, amazing thing done by the prophet. But a lot of times it's not because they love each other, and it's not till years later that they can learn to love each other. And that's something we would hear. Oh, I didn't love him at first, but I learned to love him later. That was pretty common, actually, that you would hear that kind of thing. So I think that was where they were drawing from.
Yes, and you can see the way that her mentality towards everything with Bill changes a lot. She's trying to be more supportive. It seems to Barb and to Margie that she's trying to like steal spot a first wife. Like she's much more agreeable with Bill and she's trying to do whatever he says and trying to be more helpful and all this stuff and kind of pushing Barb aside and sometimes being downright mean to Barb in ways that just weren't how it was in the beginning, where she kind of knew her place as second wife and now she's more of like, no, I'm going to just be a wife. And that's causing issues in the mix. Barb still has not forgiven Nikki for everything that Nikki's done. Like, Barb is still very much holding on to, Nikki, you tried to not have kids. You lied to us about your involvement with your father. Nikki's lied so many times. And Barb remembers, right? Yep. So Barb at this moment, she's remembering everything with Nikki, but Nikki is trying to figure out who she is, what she wants to do, starting to actually love Bill for the first time. And then you have Margie, who Barb's mad at for a completely different reason, justifiably, again, right? So she's mad at Bill for all the stuff going on. She's mad at Margie, one, not only because it's bringing up the affair again of her being with Bill before they were married, but then also Margie is having this booming business and things are going well, but she's really kind of not getting attention. Nobody's caring. No one's supporting her. She's feeling very lonely, and she kisses Ben on purpose.
Yeah, well, yes, and there was a lead up to that. It wasn't just out of the blue. She was having this event where people were bringing their families, and so she was there by herself because Bill was too busy, of course, like he always is, and he couldn't go to support Margie. And Ben finds out, and he was just trying to be supportive, so he shows up. Margie is very, very, very happy that he shows up and showing his support. And out of nowhere, she kisses him, and it just happened to be recorded, or people there saw that it was happening. And so then they assumed that they were together.
That was her husband.
And they said that over live TV that this Ben... Did they say his last name?
This is Mr. Margene Hefman.
Yeah, Mr. And then showed Ben's face. So, of course, that all blew up in their face.
And Barb saw it because Barb was trying to watch to be supportive, right? So Barb from the very first season is like, Margene, you have to dress more modestly. You can't be acting like this. I have a teenage son, all this stuff. So her worst nightmare is coming to fruition. Margie admits to Bill that it was on purpose and that she meant it and that she might have feelings. But
before she admitted that, Ben took the fall trying to protect Margie. And when Ben took the fall and said, oh, it was all me, it was
maybe
all my doing, and then, of course, that put this huge wedge between him and Bill. So Ben and Bill are now in this like weird fight going on because his son kissed his wife.
Oh my
gosh. Think about that for a second. Anyway, so then Ben is feeling very out in the weeds, and so he's thinking about packing some things and leaving for a while. And then that's where Bill comes in and sees that he's packing some things, and instead of trying to say, hey, yeah, let's work this out, he says, yeah, maybe you should get out of here for a while. And he doesn't force him out, but he agrees that he should leave.
Yeah, he encourages him to leave. And just one more thing for Barb to be, well, actually everyone was really upset by it, not just Barb. Everyone was upset by it because they're like, this is what was done to you. Like, you got kicked out of the community as a young boy and your dad kicked you out of the family and you just did that to your son. And so Bill, oh gosh, I mean, just one more mess, right? He obviously doesn't want his son around his wife because now he's feeling threatened that his wife likes his son. And in his world of Juniper Creek, that could all happen because heaven knows we just discussed a whole bunch of weirdness that can happen at Juniper Creek. But then Ben ends up going with his grandparents, ending up in Mexico, dealing with the Greens, and Bill has to go save them. So there's all this extra drama that's going into the fact that he kicked out his son. Now his son is in trouble and is dealing with these things, and it's all Bill's fault. And
I want to point out that when Margie did finally say, no, it wasn't Ben, it was me, I'm the one that did it, and in order to try to get Ben back home, right? Yeah. Margie's trying to help. Then Bill does talk to Ben, but he refuses to apologize. Bill refuses to admit that he did anything wrong. So then, of course, that just makes Ben that much more angry, and he wants to leave the family for good. He wants to leave the country if he could. You know, he's ready to just get out of the situation. And that is where he meets up with Lois and Frank, the two worst people ever. And they end up trying to smuggle birds. And that's where the Greens get involved because the smuggler, or it was their birds, I guess. Anyway, it's a whole big disaster.
Mess that Bill has to go save his son from Mexico, all because he wasn't willing to say he was sorry. And of course, he's icing out Margene because of this, because he doesn't even know what to do with her, and is, you know, even mentions like, okay, if you want to leave the family, because Margene is having the successful business and she doesn't want them to go public right away after the election either, because she knows it's going to mess up her business. And so she doesn't want it to happen because of that. Barb doesn't want it to happen because she's like, can't you see what this is already doing, let alone what it's going to do when we all come out? Nikki's the only one at this point that Bill, that's like kind of supporting Bill and saying, oh, no, this is great, it'll be good, whatever you want. But it's because she's in this new phase of falling in love with Bill. And it gets to the point with Barb where all of these things like colliding at the same time, her realizing she's just a pawn, realizing that Bill is just unfaithful and will do whatever Bill wants, dealing with Margene and Ben and all the stuff. Finally, we hear that they're going to be outed on the TV station. Bill goes and freaks out at who he thinks did it. Come to find out, it was Barb. Barb was trying to out them about his pregnancy with Anna so that he would lose the election. But Bill was able to get ahead of it, able to get it canceled, so that did not happen. The election happens, and Bill gets what Bill wants.
Bill wins the election, and just like he said he was going to, he has his 3 wives there and asks them all to come up and be by him, and announces to the world and a lot of people that were sitting there watching him and that had been supporting him as he had lied to their faces during his entire campaign, that, hey, we're polygamists. He was all proud. Yay, I can finally say I'm a polygamist. Of course, that backfires. Very obvious. And his 3 wives are very, except for Nikki, she's okay with it. But Barb and Margene are very upset at this point because they know it is going to just ruin their lives. And of course, we see, and it shows lots of people stand up and walk out. They're very, very angry that Bill had lied to them.
Yeah, well, and I think I forgot to mention that Barb, right before they found out whether or not he won, Barb sat down and said, I've needed you for 20 years, and I realize now that I don't need you anymore. Like, she is donezo. So even when he was announcing his wives, I'm like, is Barb even going to be there? Like, is Barb? And she was there. She did stand up. We know their world's going to crash down. That's going to be next season. But once again, I just can't even believe that Bill got to this point where he was willing to just trample over everybody. Like, he trampled over Dawn, made Dawn admit that he was polygamist because they looked into Home Plus and found that there was discrepancies. So he made Dawn confess that it was him instead of Bill, like it really was. You know, all these things that he's just willing to sacrifice people left and right in order to get what he wanted. And he's like, well, I have a testimony, and that's why I'm doing all this. Like, I have a testimony of the prophet Joseph Smith. I have a testimony of D&C 132, which is where plural marriage is talked about. And he's like, and I know that I'm supposed to be leading polygamists into the future, and this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, all of the awful things he does to other people and creating all of these messes, he does it all in the name of God and all in the name of me just doing what God wants me to do, to living my faith, being obedient, trying to protect my family, trying to bring this one true way of living, which is polygamy and plural marriage, back to light and making it okay and introducing it in a way that the rest of the world will accept and we can live in freedom once again, which he keeps saying, oh, you think back to Brigham Young and the early days of the church. We need to bring that back. And I'm thinking that polygamy has never been freedom and yay and accepted, right? From the beginning of the church, people were forced out of cities, forced out of states because of polygamy, right?
Yeah.
So the whole idea that, hey, it's going to be okay once I am senator, it just never made sense. Or governor. Senator. Okay, yes. Just never made sense.
No. And Marilyn at the end, when she finally figures out, because her and Bill have been having this dance of coordinating to try to take each other down kind of back and forth this whole season. And Marilyn at the end comes and she's like, I thought it was you had a mistress. I thought it was this. I thought it was that. You're a polygamist. Like you are a liar. And her quote was my favorite out of the whole thing. She said, you are a sad, stupid man. And I was like, oh, that sums up Bill so perfectly. A sad, stupid man. And then she says this. She says, at least my sins, I don't use God to justify them.
Yeah, she accepts that she makes mistakes.
But that is exactly what Bill does. Bill takes whatever mistakes he makes and he uses God and religion to justify whatever he wants to, right? So it doesn't matter if you throw people under the bus if God told you that you have to become senator. It doesn't matter if you had affairs with people if it was just you trying to grow your plural family and make God proud. It's all these things to try to manipulate and use God to justify them.
Right. And even when Bill does apologize, he does it in a way that's like, I'm sorry, but it's because of this. Basically trying to make it sound like he didn't have much of a choice, right?
Yeah, it's always Bill getting what Bill wants at the dispense and disposal of anybody and everybody else. And it is hard to see, so frustrating. I mean, at this point, he is now elected. So I don't know, though, like, will that keep them from just arresting him? Like, I don't understand how he feels like that's going to make him safe.
Yeah.
But season 5 has a lot to wrap up. again, I have no idea how in one more season they could tie this all up and how this is going to end, or if it got canceled randomly and we're not going to have a good conclusion. I hope that it gets wrapped up. I hate it when shows don't get wrapped up, but who knows what's going to happen
A
next.
lot of you, our wonderful viewers, have mentioned that this is one of your favorite shows, so it must have some kind of good ending.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hope. But yes, thank you all so much for being here with us again. Wow, it has been quite the ride, but one more season to go. Thanks for hanging out and being a part of this with us, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.